So if you like Cartier and the designs, go in there and start trying them, and then go from there. My sort of collecting's changed. Like I tell people now, don't go for the hype.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Watches and People, episode number 7, and today we have Nick, aka CartierWatchNerd, in case you don't know, and this is how he looks like IRL, right? Right, so as usual, in every Watch and People episode we're going to talk about in terms of Nick's journey, how did he get into watches, what does watch collecting mean to him, and so on, and basically talk about essentially his love for Cartier. Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, right. So perhaps just a very, very quick run through in terms of today's wrist check, right? So I have my DLC REVERSO Tribute in blue, mono.
And I'm wearing no other than a Cartier. This is the Cartier TORTUE, CPCP.
Awesome.
I'm wearing a vintage GS 44 GS, I believe. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm wearing a GS SBGR 253.
Great.
Memorize it by heart.
And I'm wearing the Baltic Marco Rotor Salmon Dial.
Perfect. All right, so let's get into it, right? So just for the audience benefit, maybe just a quick like a run through of yourself. Who are you? What do you do, and so on. Yeah.
So I'm definitely not Malaysian, obviously.
Oh, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I couldn't tell. Okay.
So my name's Nick. So I'm a Cartier addict. But look, originally from Australia, from Perth.
Right.
I've lived here in Malaysia now for coming up to 4 years.
Right.
So I moved here in 2019, just before COVID hit. Just had a year of freedom, and then pretty much all hell broke loose. Malaysia's home. So I recently got married, so my wife's Malaysian.
Right.
So
okay.
Malaysia's my home base now,
Nice.
and I love it here. So it's been a great journey.
Great.
Like 4 years has gone so quickly.
Yeah.
Great.
Congrats, man.
All right, thank you.
Right. So I think next is how do you get into watch collecting?
To be honest, I've always been interested in watch collecting from an early age. My granddad used to have he had like Seikos, and really, obviously they were quite ordinary sort of watches, but I was amazed by it. And they were mechanical, and I used to just sit there and just look at him wearing them and go, wow, I'd love to have a watch one day. I remember getting my first watch, I think I was about 5 or 6. It was one of those flick-flack watches.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was so proud to wear that. That was like, I got some photos when I was younger, and I'm always showing the watch. So I started very early.
Yeah.
I think I started collecting watches probably more seriously, maybe 5 or 6 sort of years ago. Before then, I was just wearing, you wear a watch, you maybe only have one watch in your collection, you wear it out till it's probably not good anymore, and then you go and buy another one to replace it. And then, so about 5-6 years ago, that's when I started getting into watches a bit more, and I started building a smaller sort of collection. But it wasn't Cartier, funny enough. So back then, I was sort of more into like dive watches.
Okay.
So I've had my fair share of like Omegas, like Seamaster, Speedmasters, Rolex, GLC as well. Had a Reverso.
Oh, yeah, Reverso.
Yeah.
And you no longer have it.
I don't.
Okay.
None of it.
No, look. I think I got into like divers and those sort of watches because they were the watches to have.
Right.
People say like you need to have a Speedmaster, you need to have a Submariner, you need to have. And I think I just got caught up in the hype. And I was wearing these watches. I got quite small wrists as well, so it's not like I can pull them off that well. Like some of them are big, chunky sort of things. And I don't know, I think I just changed. Like I bought my first tank solo. I wanted to add a dress watch to the collection. Yeah. And I don't know, it just spoke to me. It's a smaller watch. I found that it fit my wrist so much better, and I basically started wearing that a lot more than all the others. And then they just sort of sat there in the safe, and I'm like, I sort of fell out of love with this sort of large watches. Like now, I wouldn't wear anything that's probably bigger than 36 mil.
Okay.
And I found that these sort of more elegant, sort of classy dress watches sort of fit my style a bit more. So I don't need to be wearing watches 24/7. I want to go to the gym or when I'm playing sport, I don't need to have a watch on. So I wouldn't wear these, but I'll probably just wear like an Apple Watch or a sports watch, etc. So I found that these sort of suited my lifestyle. I work in an office in a corporate job. I like going out, nice dinners and stuff. where I felt more at home wearing like a smaller, more classy sort of piece. And I think after buying that tank, I just fell into the Cartier rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole is massive.
Right.
Like, I know you can look at Rolex, you've got some of the other brands, they all got history.
Yep.
But Cartier's history is just so crazy. It's like they've been going since the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different shapes, sizes, varieties. And what I like about Cartier is there's so much to learn, but you can't just go online. Like, a lot of the history is not recorded anywhere. So the only way to learn about it is you start meeting and speaking to different people. I think social media is amazing because social media has allowed watch collectors to start talking, and even to this day, like, I've been into Cartier for at least for just over 2 years, but even to this day I look on social media and I still see a watch that I didn't even know existed.
Right.
So yeah, so I bought this tank, started wearing it a lot more. It was sort of my go-to day to day. And what I like about the tank is you can wear it casually, you can wear it dressed up. I wear it in like shorts, t-shirts and flip-flops, and it doesn't feel out of place. And so what happened is I wanted to add more. So I spent a lot of time in the boutique.
Yes.
I was looking, trying on different watches, and you know what it's like. You see something you like. It's not like we have like so much funds.
Yeah.
So I had to start obviously letting
Liquidating
pieces go.
and okay.
So I started moving pretty much all of them. I moved all of them. Yes, I lost some money on some and broke even on others. But it wasn't about the money. It was more I went into this rabbit hole and I wanted to have them all.
Right.
So like, and with Cartier, there's so many different shapes, and how I've sort of collecting now is trying to get as many of these shapes as possible.
Okay.
It's like Pokemon, you got to have it all.
So maybe just a quick question. Is it more of a self-induced kind of rabbit hole, or was there someone who kind of like urged you on? Because you mentioned how hard is it to research about it. So was there someone who helped you along the way?
I think, like, first of all, it was like social media. There's people like George Kramer and Ronnie. I don't know if you guys know him, but they're huge collectors of Cartier and a lot of vintage sort of pieces.
Yeah.
They've got amazing social media sort of presence, and I started following them, which they're the poison. And then it just went. There's also a guy in Singapore. His name's Elvin.
Yes.
So I followed him, and he has an amazing sort of pieces as well, and that sort of made me start wanting. Okay. I saw his tank. He has a tank Louis Cartier. I was like, wow, this is nice as well. And then it just went from there.
Right.
So, and then as you start collecting certain brands, you start meeting people locally as well. So the Cartier community here I think it's grown a lot in the last few years. Like, I'm good friends with a guy called Denson who also loves Cartier. He's got the obsession like me.
Yeah.
And then that's probably been the downside as well, because we both poison each other. And then you're talking more about it, you're seeing more, and then it just snowballs into this huge big rabbit hole.
Right.
But that's one of the things I like about collecting watches. It doesn't even have to be Cartier. It's even like bringing people together. Like it's a hobby where it could be a lonely hobby.
Yeah.
And for many years, I think before social media, it probably was. Like you speak to some of the more older collectors. And they never even bring their watches out. They sit in the safe. You might see them wear one or two here and there, but I think now it's evolved where you have communities of people getting together, got watch gatherings, like your podcasts and YouTube
like
channel,
how we meet today, right? Yeah, exactly.
And to be honest, the last few years, probably the last 2 years in Malaysia, where I've started actually getting to know so many different people. Like your friend groups just become all about watches. And to be honest, like some of the times you catch up with your watch friends, but you don't even talk about watches anymore, because you start getting to know them on a more sort of personal.
Right.
And even with Cartier, like I started a Cartier Facebook group for Malaysians. We've started growing that now. There's about 200 odd people. We organised a Cartier sort of gathering, which is the first time that Cartier did one in Malaysia. So we organised it with Cartier.
With Cartier.
Yeah. So we had a preview of the 2022 novelties, so the pieces. So we had a group of, I think there was about 20 of us.
Right.
We all got together, which was probably the first time. It was amazing. And we had Elvin from Singapore come over. So he did a bit of a talk about his watch journey, his Cartier collection. And it's just growing. And I didn't realise there was that many people in Malaysia that actually liked Cartier as much.
Okay. So maybe perhaps to circle back a little bit, like you mentioned, you spent some time collecting, I would say, regular hype pieces, right?
Yeah.
How long was that?
Probably about 3 years.
3 years.
Yep.
Quite a while.
And then how long after your first tank you decided that switch to liquidate everything?
I think it was probably about. Look, it didn't happen straight. It's not like I went and liquidated everything. It probably took at least a year before I went full 100%.
But
Cartier.
when it's, how fast do you know? Right.
I think after I got this one, I went and got the next one, which is the Santos, the medium-sized one. I think I got that one within maybe 3 months.
Oh, wow, that's pretty quick.
Then the next one was probably 2 months later.
Oh, okay.
And then I started getting rid of watches.
Right. Okay, so never have you felt the similar feeling with other watches until Cartier. It was any brand that came close. Yeah.
JLC was up there, to be honest.
Yeah.
Very similar to Cartier, and that's sort of where as well. Like obviously the JLC, I got that probably a little bit before the tank. Yeah. And that sort of helped me sort of move and gravitate towards that as well. I'm going to say this, but Rolex obviously was one of those pieces as well, which I sort of liked them. Yeah. But the thing I found with Rolex is once you collect maybe you get a Submariner, you get maybe a GMT, Datejust. There's not really much. There's not really nowhere else to go. Yeah. Like every other piece is very similar, maybe with different bezel, or different size, etc. And that's when I started, and that's what I'm saying. When I got to Cartier, it sort of spoke to me. It's got that elegance. There's that design language, and
the mystery component, I guess, which is what you said. Like the Rolex one is like pretty much a fixed catalog, and then Cartier ones you're still discovering new ones today as well.
And to be honest, when you look at all the other watch brands, they're all round. Like obviously that JLC obviously have like a more rectangle shape, but why do watches need to be round? That's what I love about Cartier. Like I'm 100% into the brand, but you can create a completely unique and different watch collection because if you look at my collection, like they're all different shapes and sizes, and what I'm trying to do now is try and collect all the different types of shapes so that your collection is so diverse. Right. Cartier do round watches, they do rectangle, they do. Well, this is the Tortue, which actually means turtle in French, so it's more of a turtle shape.
Crash,
which is another level as well. So even if I want to create a collection and collect all of it, it's going to take me a long time. Okay. There's so many to choose from. Okay. And then you look at, and then what Cartier do very well is they're obviously an old brand. They look at then reinventing or relaunching some of their classics. So then it takes it to another level again. There's all different dials and sizes. A good example is like the Pebble, which is a brand new release that just got launched. It was a unicorn watch back in the day. There's like 6 of them in the world, and Cartier relaunched it for its 50th anniversary, and then it gets the other generation of collectors now into that as well. And that's what I like about it. The Cartier, yes, they release different watches. Like every year they release what you call a Privé, which is their new watch, but it doesn't deviate much from the traditional design language. And that's another reason I like Cartier, because they never go out of fashion. Like I'm wearing a watch here from the early 2000s, and you could still wear it today. No one will know it was such an old watch.
Right. So when you talk about watch collection, right, I just want to understand a little bit. How do you make your decision into getting your watches? What is your criteria? Is it? I mean, obviously, looks is one of it you talk about. Does functionality or the horology of it in terms of like the movement and everything, does that matter to you as well? So just want to understand that a little bit.
For me, it's more the design side, to be honest, and it fits well with Cartier. So Cartier make amazing movements, and they have got some amazing pieces which can be up there with high horology, but they're more known for their design and shapes. Like most people wouldn't buy a Cartier for its movement. There's a few movements out there that are amazing, like the CPCP mono pusher, amazing. But Cartier didn't develop that movement themselves. They obviously had help. Right. And you look at some of Cartier's movements as well, and there's a lot of influence from JLC, from Piaget. It's not like they're all in-house developed. if you look at some of my pieces, like I've got quartz movements, I've got automatic, I've got manual wind. So for me, it's probably less about the movement and more into the actual how it looks on my wrist.
Right. How it makes you feel in general.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
I know there's some collectors that want all the chronographs or they want all these different movements and look, I think about me though, with my watches, like I still appreciate all those different movements as well. Like when I see like the Watch of Wonders and you see all these new sort of movements and all these new sort of like designs coming out, I still look at it and go, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
But it's not like I'm going out there to buy it because of that. Yeah.
But at least you respect it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess that's the good thing about the hobby and meeting people, right? You can enjoy it vicariously through.
That's right.
Like all of us, right?
And that's why I like going to watch meetups and meeting people, because everyone's got something different you can experience and try on. And that's my favourite. And you see so many different pieces. If we all collect the same, it'd be a very boring world.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And based on what you said, I guess you wouldn't buy the same K-shape.
But at least try not to, right?
Well, so I started obviously collecting more of the tanks, so which is similar to the one that you're wearing now. So I have probably 4 of the same but different tanks. So obviously I started with the Solo, which is now discontinued, which is a little bit larger than the traditional tank. I've got a blue tank Must, so it's from last year, the new collection.
Yeah.
Which is probably more similar design to more of the traditional tank.
There's more curve, right?
And then I ended up getting one of the tank Louis Cartiers, which is the rose gold, which again is very similar shape to the Must.
The hand-wound one you got?
That's the hand-wound.
Hand-wound. Okay.
I think for the precious metal, it needs to be. I prefer it when it's a manual wind.
Fair enough.
And then I got the Solar Beat, which is Cartier's first solar-powered quartz movement. So I have a lot of tanks. And then, so from now I'm looking to maybe move away from the tanks into more of the
unique ones.
Yeah,
right.
especially more of the iconic designs. I've already got the tank. Got a Tortue, like the American, which it's similar to a tank, but it's a bit more elongated. But there's so many, like I could probably list off all these names, and you probably wouldn't even know what it looks like. There's so many to choose from.
So while you're talking about that different shapes, what is the next one in your list? That realistically speaking, right?
That's hard. So I would love, one of my favourite watches at the moment is the cloche, which means bell. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a bell shaped, but it's on its side.
It's like the table clock, but on the wrist.
So it passes as a table clock as well. So some people, you can use it as a bedside clock. I'd love one of them. And also a Sin tray. So the Sin tray is very similar to the American. The difference is the American was released obviously in the 2000s. If you look at the back, it's flat. It's automatic movement, but it's very flat. Whereas the Sin tray is it's thin. It's got a manual wind, but it's got a natural curve to it. So I think it's about 46 millimeter lug to lug. But because of the curve, it fits most small wrists really well. That would be 2 of my ones that I'd love to get.
Okay.
They're on the wish list.
I'm sure you'll get it soon in no time. Right? I'm sure.
We'll bring him in next time.
So now we heard about the good stuff, right? So let's go a little bit controversial, right? I know that a lot of people, at least in the on the web, at least online, they criticize Cartier for being a jewelry / fashion company, and it says like, they are not I would say primarily a watch focused company, as that you mentioned as well. They were much focused on the design, and their target audience as well as people who are more into the looks, and probably a lot of ladies more than men as well. What are your thoughts about that? Are people just being picky, or like?
Look, I think if you go back in history, so like Cartier, they launched the first wristwatch, the Santos. This is back in the 1900s. I think it was like 1904 or something like that. So they sort of started. We're wearing watches because of that. And then over time, like Cartier obviously developed all sorts of different shapes, like I'm saying, and it really changed the way that people were wearing watches, because most of the brands are all circular, etc. I think what happened, over the years, like other watches started releasing more in-house movements. It was more about the movement side, and I think Cartier started drifting away a bit more. But they still make some amazing pieces, and I would say some of their pieces you could compare them to other high horology sort of watches as well. So I honestly don't think they're a jewelry brand. I know there's a lot of people do, and a lot of people online, but I don't think they really understand the actual brand and the different watches and the history. A lot of people don't know how revolutionary like Cartier was to the watch industry. Like obviously they made the first wristwatch, they made the point clasp. I don't know if you know, but Cartier invented this clasp.
Okay.
So it's the reason that we most have all those clasps as well. So,
I didn't actually.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So I mean, so there's such a big history, and a lot of people don't really know it. And I think obviously they started as a jewelry company, and they did that very well. But Louis Cartier also did some amazing designs on watches. Like he's the one that created most of the watches we wear today. He created the tank. It was inspired from the Renault tanks back in the World War. And I think if you now look at maybe where Cartier have come, like the last few years, like Cartier have just blown up in the watch industry. Even if you look at the top sales last year, Cartier was number two.
Yep.
So they're in front of Patek, they're in front of Omega, they're in front of all the watch brands that we know and love. And if you look at, I think obviously when the new CEO started, that's when things started getting a bit more like there's a lot more watches coming out. They're bringing back their traditional ones, even some of the movements that they're bringing out, like last year's Mystique. I don't know if you saw it, but it's basically like a floating, basically the movements in the rotor, which is something completely different. So I think it probably didn't help as well with the whole quartz crisis, and Cartier then started maybe shifting, and they started maybe releasing more affordable pieces. So they went into more of the stainless steel. They went into quartz as well. They started releasing more of the gold, the vermeil, so the gold plated sort of watches. And I think maybe that sort of era is when maybe people then started looking, I wouldn't say down, but maybe people started moving on to other sort of pieces. But I think it's back. Like
it's definitely back.
If you look, like I said, the last few years, it's just gone crazy.
Right.
The demand for Cartier watches is through the roof. Like every year, I think this year was probably one of the biggest. You look at Watch of Wonders. Some of the watches, I know there was a wait list, huge wait list. Like the Dumont lacquer. So they released the Centaurus Dumont with lacquer. That pretty much sold out the first day it was launched. So it's starting to take shape again. I think what you mentioned as well, like collectors of Cartier, it's not about the movement. And I think where the watch collecting side has gone, it is a lot about the movement now. Like I'd say most of you guys would get excited about different movements, and you look at what like Grand Seiko are doing, etc. I think it's just a different type of collection. And if you understand Cartier as a brand, then I think people realise that. But I don't think people really understand.
Fair enough. I think that's a good point. I mean, like, I always say there's no right or wrong way to watch collecting. I mean, some people like, in terms of collecting one brand, some people like variety, some people like movement, some people, and there's every watch for everybody, right?
And now more people know about the brand.
Right. Exactly. Right. So on that note, what you're talking about in terms of the sales picking up for Cartier, do you think that is eventually a downside? Well, what I meant by that is because that's how everything is, right? Rolex used to be very much a non-hype pieces, and it was very much focusing in terms of the build quality and the tool functionality of the watch. Could Cartier eventually get too influenced by the hype and just going into the wrong direction?
So what I like about Cartier, yes, they're a massive brand, massive company, but they still have that sort of family, sort of run business sort of feel sometimes. So with Cartier, it is, I know everyone says this, but it is really about building a relationship with the brand. They're not a company like Rolex where you walk in, and I walked in so many ADs here before, and they just say, oh, no stock, they shut the door. So a lot of young collectors, they don't even get a chance. Well, now at least you can try on some of the watches, but before prototypes, you couldn't see anything. Cartier, you walk into a boutique, and if you are actually interested in watches and you're actually interested in building a collection, they'll sit with you, they'll talk to you, they'll show you the different watches. Cartier also you've got two sort of streams you can go down. Like your regular production watches are very accessible. Like you could walk into the Cartier boutique today and you could pick up a Tank, you could pick up a Santos, you can walk in there, the watches that you see, you can buy them. So it's very accessible for brand new collectors that are trying to get into the brand. Once you start building that relationship with the brand and you start it's building a purchase history is important as well, but then that's when you can start moving to more of the limited pieces. So Cartier do every year there's pieces where you might only have 100 or 200 pieces. Where what's happening now then obviously is getting those pieces is probably getting a bit more competitive. So yes, it does go back to obviously the purchase history, but unlike Rolex and some of these other brands, they don't bundle. They're not going to, you go to AD and they're going to say, okay, we'll give you this piece if you go and buy all of these regular production. So it's a little bit different. I know that Cartier behind the scenes as well, like they are looking at the profile of the person. They want to make sure that the people getting the watches are true collectors. I know the Rolex and all that say it as well, but I think money talks sometimes in some of these places. Cartier are also very, very, very good at making sure that it doesn't go the traditional flippers. And I think what helps is that obviously pieces are numbered, it's limited. If I got a piece here in Malaysia, there's only two, and then you see it up on Chrono, it's very noble, and then you'll be cut off. So what I like about it is that you can build a proper relationship. Like I go into the boutique and just go and talk to them. We talk about watches, we talk about jewelry, we talk about whatever else. But there's no pressure for me to go and okay, I'm going to buy that watch today.
But on that difference between that and Rolex is because Cartier, at least right now, there's a lot of boutiques available, right? And Rolex, it's only AD, where it's, I would say Rolex could have done something, but primarily the culprit, it's the AD that is making the decision,
and
right?
that's what I think the difference is. It's because it's run by the brand. They have more control. It's not like an AD where you need to sell a certain amount of watches to keep your Rolex title or your Patek title. These guys, it's about making sure that they're building a relationship with the proper collectors, the collectors that want to go on a journey. Saying that though, if you want to go and buy one piece, they're still going to treat you the same way. But that's like me. When I went there and started building the relationship, I started then obviously learning more. They'll call me and say, "Oh, look at this piece that's come in. Come and check it out." And you start learning more about the history. Like I was saying, there's not a lot of history in Cartier on the internet, but you go and talk to the boutique and you talk to the watch experts, and you just start learning so much. Look, I think Cartier, it could get to a point where it might get harder and harder to get pieces. I've noticed it in the last year. A lot more people now, Cartier's on people's mouth a lot more. I'm talking about Cartier and people are going to go start buying.
Everyone's going to get one.
I know. But I think, I was talking to Denson about this actually as well. Like, if I don't get allocated a piece, I'm not going to be angry about it. Like, if Denson or you got one and I didn't, I'd be excited for you and I'd go and at least I can go and try it on. So I think it's just little different collectors that are collecting Rolex. Cartier. I don't think they're ever going to be the hype pieces because again, it takes a certain person who wears these sort of watches. To be honest, they're not everyday watches. Whereas a lot of collectors like Rolex and even like the APs and stuff, like they are, you could wear them every day. So you get a lot more of the, I shouldn't say this sounds bad, but you get a lot more of the generic collectors. Rolex has been obviously linked to if something good in your career happens or a celebration, then people go and buy it. So I think, going back to your question, I think yes, Cartier is going to get bigger and bigger, and it probably is going to be harder to maybe get allocated some of the more special pieces. But I don't think it's going to happen to their regular day to day. I can't see it happening.
Okay.
But for you personally, do you feel conflicted at all? Because obviously you want to spread gospel about the brand. But at the same time, you mentioned that it also makes the harder to obtain pieces harder to obtain, and I guess that's where you're heading to. Do you feel conflicted, or I
would love to see Cartier become a bit more mainstream as well. I want people to understand the brand. I want people to understand the design language, and understand that it's not always about the movement. Like quartz is still, to me, just as good as an automatic or manual. So I don't think I'm conflicted. And in the day, I can't have them all. Like funds, and it's just impossible. So as long as, look, in the day, like if there's a watch I like, I'll try to get allocation. If I get it, I get it. If not, I look from afar.
Because I think with that, it's like there's no two ways about it, right? I mean, as it gets popular, it's naturally going to get harder to get, right?
Yep.
It's just 100%. Natural supply and demand. But what's more important is that the transparency between of how you're going to get it and so on. If they tell you we only have one and we're going to give it to this guy because this guy is our VVVIP, he spent X amount, you at least understand, okay, fine, he spends more than me, like what can I do about it, right? So I think if there's a transparency, it's fine, right? At least that's how I feel about it. Yeah,
and again that goes back to the brand owning the boutiques, because they control it a lot better. What they're saying is obviously what it is. It's not like an AD making up all sorts of things, or that one of their VVIPs comes in. Okay, we're going to give it to him instead, so he keeps spending. It's just a different experience.
Okay, and
I think, to be honest, brands like Rolex and Patek would actually start getting things right if they went down that line as well. You need to be able to control it because there's so many people into watches and everyone wants one where there's only limited stock. I suppose the difference as well with like the Rolex and stuff is that there's so many, how many millions of watches do they produce a year? The hard to get Cartiers, they are limited by number. Like they're literally only maybe 250, 500, sometimes 50 pieces. So it's just a very different.
Fair enough.
Whereas I think more brands need to control the sales experience because I've been to many boutiques in Cartier all around the world. I was in New York recently for my honeymoon, and we walked into the boutique and the service was the same. It's the same experience wherever you go.
Okay.
Whereas you walk, I'm not going to mention names, but you walk into certain ADs here, and sometimes you get a good service, and at times you get completely opposite.
Right. So the next thing I want to touch upon is it's in terms of the pricing, right? So this is a little bit controversial as well, right? Because comparatively to other watches, sometimes you do get, let's say, a quartz watch from Cartier. That is more expensive than a in-house automatic movement from other brands and stuff. So there's always a debate and stuff. So some you're paying for the design and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, it's true. Like I'd say Cartier, they're not cheap, and that's why again it's a different sort of collector that collects. Like you don't just walk in and go, I want to buy this. So like a tank, usually around say 12, sort of 13,000. I bring it for a quartz. You're paying for obviously the Cartier's name, the history. There's so much more that goes behind it. Yes, it's a stainless steel watch, it's a quartz. But it's a tank. It's so iconic. You wear it, everyone knows what it is. You feel good about wearing it. So for me, price, yes, it's important, but I think for what you're getting, and once you understand, I think the price point is on par.
Right.
I still think Cartier are still more accessible than look at Patek, look at AP, look at some of the other brands where a person who started out his watch collection, they can't just walk into a shop and buy. Even if they could get an allocation, we're talking like 100 plus for some of these watches.
Right.
Is resale value still important for you?
For me, no. My watches are my babies, so I couldn't sell them. If I parted with one, like this is my first watch. I think my first Cartier watch.
You know this recorded, right? So just to make sure.
And to be honest, I'll be honest with you. Like Cartier, a lot of the models they're not going to appreciate. Like most of these models I've got here, these are their regular production. Like I'm not going to make money on them. Like I don't buy them as an investment. Like look, even the watches I sold, I didn't make money on a lot of those watches. Like maybe I got back what I paid, or I lost money. So for me, it's more about buying a watch to enjoy and experience than buying a watch because if I buy this, I might be able to sell it 2 or 3 years down the track for X amount. I think Cartier, if you look at maybe some of their vintage pieces, they have appreciated a lot over the last few years, but that's because they're also becoming a bit more popular brand. Like the CPCP collection I've got years ago, that they were sitting there, no one really wanted them, and the last few years have started to surge and the prices have gone up. So much so that it's probably outside my sort of price point for some of these pieces as well. But my collecting sort of thing is, I buy what you like, wear them, enjoy them. If it appreciates, it appreciates. And maybe you're lucky. If you need to sell for whatever reason, at least you've got something there. But this hobby, if you look back in the years, like you weren't buying watches to make money. It's only in the last few years in social media. People were buying watches, like you look at your parents, your grandparents, they were buying watches and wore the hell out of them.
Yep.
They maybe passed them down. I got one of my grandfather's watches from the 60s, and he wore it every day. He wore it gardening, and there's little scratches all over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think value, yes, is sometimes important, but it depends how you collect.
Right.
So yeah, there's not one watch in my collection that I could part with at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think you would because you're only collecting Cartiers now, but ever since you started collecting Cartiers, has there been other brands that have piqued your interest?
Yeah, look, to be honest, other brand, I'm not like so like Cartier only and hate it. Like some of the other brands, like you get their fanboys and no other watch is ever comparable. So I love watches in general. So it still excites me to go and look at different watches. Like I go into other boutiques and other brands. Like I went into Rolex the other day and tried on their massive diamonds. I appreciate all sorts of watches, and sometimes there's watches I like the new Tudor Pelagos.
39, okay.
I love it. It's perfect. But again, if I buy that, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking
your less funds for
what
it.
I could have bought in the Cartier side.
Right.
So look, I have, to be honest, I have a PRX. That's my daily beater watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
The 41? I mean,
I got the 35 mil.
The 35, okay, the quartz
nice.
one.
It's quartz.
Yeah.
But it's my beater.
Really nice.
Yeah.
It fits well on the wrist.
Which dial is it?
I got the blue one.
The blue
Blue
one.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that I would wear other brands as well. And the reason I bought that one is because Cartier are more dressy. Like sometimes I like to go under the radar a bit and maybe wear a PRX, and it depends on what I'm doing in the day. Cartier are great to wear every day, but there's certain activities that you probably wouldn't be wearing a Cartier watch. So yeah, look, I think I'm not going to rule out other brands in the future. But at the moment, there's nothing that really is. There's nothing really that I would go out and buy, knowing that I could have maybe bought something else from Cartier at the moment.
Perhaps down the line when you have reached the peak of Cartier.
You've explored all the shapes.
I think the problem with the rabbit hole with Cartier is at the moment I'm more into the moderns. I think once I get every modern that I want, there's a whole different world of vintage there. It's and again, this is what happened with Cartier. It's a bit hard for research. So at least like Rolex, Patek, there's so much information out there. Cartier vintage, there's nothing. Like there's sometimes you have no idea what even the reference number was.
Okay.
So yeah, I think my collection at the moment will be more modern, and then maybe moving down once I've done that is maybe look at the vintage side. But you never know. There could be a Patek that come up or AP or something that strikes my interest.
You can always change your Instagram handle to add another brand.
Partially,
I think I'll be a Cartier fanboy for life, but I'm not so narrow-minded. But I think as watch collectors that we need to be able to appreciate different brands, different designs. Like I look at some of the Patek watches that come out and they're amazing. And you look at their movements, even with the watches we got here today, I loved looking at the case bags and having a look at the movements.
I mean, obviously, Cartier, some of Cartier watches are influenced by other brands as well, like the Basculante, is that how you pronounce it?
Basculante,
yeah, Basculante, that's from Reverso, right?
Very similar.
So there you go.
And it was very similar design. They designed it so that when you're doing activities, you can flip it over, and it doesn't scratch the face.
Right.
So I love that watch actually. That's one that the price has gone crazy. For a stainless steel version in manual wine, you're probably looking at about
40K.
even 45-50 for a good one. So it's gone crazy.
Right.
So just curious, like, because I think it was the Reverso that you mentioned, right? That kind of got you interested into the form factor of a Cartier. So, because the Reverso design language and the Cartier design language is quite different, although the shape is the same. But so what was kind of that struck you? That
do you know what it was? So I loved the Reverso.
Yeah.
For me, it was just a bit large. Whereas you wear the tank, it's shorter lug to lug and it's thin. Like you can wear that under a cuff easy. Whereas I had the Reverso Duo, the medium,
right,
which it was quite chunky. I felt like it was quite big on my wrist as well, because if you look at the watch is quite straight on the back, there's not much of a curve. So that's where I gravitated towards the tank, and then I decided that I prefer the tanks over the Reverso.
So it's just purely aesthetic shapes.
Aesthetics, But Reverso is great though. Look, it's another watch that has got so much history, and as they say, like JLC, the watchmaker of watchmakers. And to be honest, there's so much link between Cartier and JLC back in the days, even before they were JLC. So they're now under the same Richemont group as well. So like JLC and Cartier go hand in hand, I think. And that's what I liked about it. They were so similar as well. And you can go back with JLC, like some of their Reversos. There's so many you can collect as well if you're just a Reverso collector.
I'm also curious, like when you started your watch journey, like you're just buying things because they're hyped, right? Which point in time did you realize that the size and fit on you is important?
When I put on a smaller watch, because back then I was like, I think I mentioned before, I had a Datejust 41, and I didn't even back then. I think years ago, watches were big. Like, even when I was younger, I was buying like cheaper watches, like G-Shocks and everything. Wearing these massive watches. I look back at some photos, like, how did I wear that? So I didn't really know any better. Even like with Rolex, I went straight to a 41 Datejust. I didn't even consider the 36. I thought it was too small. I put on obviously the Reverso, but it was still quite big for me. The medium size was still quite long and chunky. When I put on like the tank, I was like, wow, this is. I had that sort of light bulb moment where it just felt right, and I thought, wow, this is how watches should be. I think people are now starting to gravitate towards more of the smaller size, not just because you have small wrists, but maybe because they want something a bit more classy.
I think there's always a sentiment that smaller watches are feminine, and then people finally, in a way, got past that. Where it says that man is actually able to wear smaller watches. I mean, back then, all men's watches were like 32, 34, and so on, right?
I still get people look and go, oh, this Cartier is a feminine watch. Like, you mean this one here, the American, but the lug width here is about 14 mil, which most guys would look at and go, it's a female's watch. But what I like about Cartier is that it's so unisex. Like, my wife, if her wrist could fit, she could wear any of these watches. Because you can, this could be a guy's watch, it could be a girl's watch. But what I find about it is, that's the beauty of it. Like, there's no real gender sort of side anymore. And I think even now females are wearing larger watches. I think even females are wearing the 41 Rolex, or the OPs and stuff.
That's true.
So many females wear the Daytona now. Like, it's crazy. It's probably more of a female watch than a guy's watch sometimes. So I think, for me it was just the sizing and how I felt on the wrist. What I like about wearing a small watch as well, you don't have to worry about hitting it on door jams.
But of course, one was the design from Reverso to Cartier, but the other is also the shape, right? Because previously it's always been round watches. So Reverso was your first square watch. So how do you also gravitate towards a square watch or like a rectangular watch? Like,
I think for me, like, I was getting bored with just round watches. That's what I'm saying. Like, why do watches have to be round? And obviously, I was looking at different history and different things, and then the Reverso sort of spoke because it's a little bit different. I think these days as well, people are now wearing smartwatches more, and you start seeing different size watches. And for me, it's more about, like I said, the design and the shapes. Rectangle watch, and it just they fit really. They look really good.
Thanks.
There's a class to it as well. And it's just different to what everyone else has. Like, I don't want to. Yes, I was collecting the hype watches before, like everyone else. You go to watch meets and
here's another Rolex.
There's always Submariner. They're so hard to get, yet everyone's wearing them.
But now that you mentioned this point, when Cartier goes up, everybody's gonna have a tank. How would you feel then? Are you going to feel differently then? It's like, I don't want rectangular watches anymore. It has to be like this or crash and everything. Are you just going to go to that level?
I think where I'm looking to collect now, like I'm now looking to really create more of the limited watches, the ones that people don't always have. So again, I don't mind if everyone has a tank here. but I would like to start looking at more of the pieces where you may only have 200. And for me, it's like the designs are different dials. So even though I've got so many tanks, every dial's different. And you're never gonna, well, I hope you're never gonna see the same one. I think at the moment, Cartier still has that bit of a flair. Whenever I go to a watch meet or something, I'm usually the only one with a Cartier, or I bring like a TORTUE, and even you guys probably haven't even seen one before. So it's that's where I want to now move my collection, is more of the ones you don't see every day, the limited, the numbered pieces, even some of the ones where it's so unique that everyone looks at it and goes, wow, I've never seen anyone wear a TORTUE here. So it's they're the pieces I like. I like the pieces where someone will come up to you and go, oh, what is that watch there? Look at people's faces when they look at it and go, wow, this looks really cool. Okay. So again, I think I don't collect for what other people think as well. So like for me, if everyone's wearing a tank, but it's more about how it feels to me. I think the watches I bought before, I did literally buy them because everyone needs a Submariner, everyone needs a Speedmaster. There wasn't that when I started Cartier. It wasn't like someone said you need to have this watch as your dress watch. It's something that I gravitated to because of my personal style and what I liked.
Right. So what is the one thing that you hate, or hate is a big word, but dislike about Cartier at the moment, if any?
If any.
Yeah. If any. If one, or when put it this way, one thing that you could change in Cartier if you can make the decision to.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
That's a very hard one. I don't think there's much. Look, my experience with the brand has been amazing. I don't think there would be too much that I would change personally. My journey has been amazing. That's a really hard question. What would I change? I think what I'd like maybe to see is they need to maybe look at maybe promoting maybe more of the high horology brands a bit more, make them a bit more accessible, which will then maybe change people's view that they're not just a jewelry brand or a fashion brand. I think Cartier is still similar to like the Bulgarias and stuff like that, whereas there's so much more advanced, and maybe they need to go out there and maybe promote more of those other watches. Like some of the Watch and Wonders, maybe have a piece that can go around so everyone can see. And I think it's getting better because a lot more people are now buying Cartier because of the horology side. But I think there's a bit more work to do there to get people out of that whole fashion brand or jeweler sort of mentality. I think if you look at Bulgaria as well, they're doing very similar. They're starting to get out there a bit more. People always, Bulgaria's the same. Like everyone looked at Bulgaria, it's just a fashion brand, it's a jeweler brand. You got Hermes as well. Like they're starting to start making watches, which they are quite good at as well. So I think it's just maybe more promotion and really starting to grow the watch side of things. But to be honest, like the last few years, I know Cartier have started doing that. So they're now looking at watches. They're actually promoting their watches a lot more. Cartier just started a Instagram account, Cartier Watch Community. That's run by Cartier. So they're starting to build that sort of community as well.
Okay.
And that's what I like. I like being involved with that. Like here in Malaysia, I want to continue building the Cartier community and educating people, and so people start thinking a bit differently about the brand.
Okay. Perhaps let's wrap this up with one last question. What is a piece of advice that you can give someone that was getting into the Cartier brand? Where do they start? What they should be looking at and so on.
I think the first thing is to go down to the boutique and really immerse yourself into all the different watches, because there's so many Cartier designs and models that you could pick from, and to be honest, there's one that would fit all sorts of different like what you like, different lifestyles. I think if there was a watch that would probably help, I think that someone that should get into like a tank or maybe a Santos. The Santos is a great one because it's an everyday watch. It's sort of like a sports watch that you can wear on a day-to-day basis, but it's also versatile because you can remove the strap. I don't know if you've seen that. You can put a leather on, or you can change it up, so you can turn into a day-to-day sports watch into a nice watch you can wear for dinner.
And it's 100 meters water resistance.
100 meters, exactly. So for me, I think go into the boutique, start looking at what you like, and then maybe have a look at a tank and maybe have a look at a Santos. I think they're probably the two watches that get people in.
Yep.
Obviously, they're the ones that got me into the sort of collection as well.
Right.
And don't be afraid of quartz. So I know quartz gets a bad rap, but I think for a person who's wanting to build a collection, quartz is quite accessible. It's a dress watch, guys. Like you don't even have a tick in hand, so you would never know if this was a quartz watch or not.
Exactly.
So I think you need to, like a lot of the people that get into the brand, need to maybe open their eyes because you can get some really amazing quartz watches at very affordable. Yes, more expensive than maybe some other quartzes, but they're still very affordable prices to get into the brand.
Right.
And I think that's what I like about Cartier. It's not so much hype. So if you like Cartier and the designs, go in there and start trying them, and then go from there. My sort of collecting's changed. Like I tell people now, don't go for the hype.
Right.
Like every watch collection doesn't need to have a Seamaster or a Submariner. That's one of the things that I would go back, if I could do things again, I'd probably change the collection very, very differently, because I would go what I actually like to wear. If it's a quad, if it's a tiny little 34mm, buy what you like, enjoy what you like, and forget about the influences.
And to your point, there is a lot of value in the secondary market, right?
Yep.
For Cartier, even for like a tank.
Yep. I think they probably don't drop as much as some of the other brands. They do seem to hold their value, especially if you look at maybe the more special pieces or more of the precious metal side of things as well.
Because I see like on a lot of secondary like marketplaces, like a Santos Galbi, really, really decent value for the watch that you're getting.
Yeah, I think you can buy a Galbi, sometimes for less than 12,000, like even cheaper than that, depending on the quality and stuff. So that's another good point, actually. Like if you're looking at getting into Cartier, but you maybe don't want to spend the money on a brand new one, there's some amazing vintage pieces. But for a new collector, I'll just be so careful, because it's hard to authenticate a lot of these watches. There's so many fakes, especially tanks. I see some people, they send me different photos saying, is this real? And I can see it's definitely not real. So it's a watch that does get replicated a lot, and I've seen a lot of collectors, they've started with vintage not knowing, and I have to tell them, look, this is not real. So that's the only problem with vintage. You need to be really careful. But maybe if you look at more of the neo vintage stuff from maybe the late 90s, the early 2000s, there's a bit more information. But anything prior, it's just that bit risky. I'd hate for someone to go out there, buy a tank that they think is real, and then they take it for the first service and they realise it's a Franken watch or something.
Alright, so I think that's a great way to end it. So a big thank you again, Nick, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Instagram handle and everything, CartierWatchNerd, will be placed here as usual. So please give him a follow.
Maybe share the Facebook group as well. So anyone that wants anyone here in Malaysia, I limit it to Malaysia only, because what we're planning to do is start organising more events and maybe do things with Cartier where we can, or even just little private sort of watch educational events, or even just watch gatherings. So I'll share you the link for that as well.
Definitely. Do look that up as well. Join it if you're interested. You get a chance to meet Nick in person, and he'll probably help you out in terms of your watch journey with Cartier. Yeah,
for sure. And even if you guys want to reach out to me on direct message, even, I'm happy to even go to the boutique with anyone here in Malaysia and sort of teach them a bit more about the different watches that they can buy. So
you're not getting a commission from Cartier.
I'm not. I wish I was sponsored. Would make my life a lot easier.
Right, Cartier, you hear that? Yeah.
But I'm so passionate about it, and what I love is having other people and sharing that passion. So if there's someone that just wants to know something more about the brand, just reach out to me. So
Perfect.
Anytime.
All right, and that's it for today. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.